بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى أهل بيته أجمعين. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويدعو المستكبرين ويخلق الملوك ويستخلف الآخرين سارح المستصرخين مؤتمد المؤمنين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك. وقال تعالى في القرآن المجيد في سورة البقرة: يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولنبلونكم بشيء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, and our beautiful children, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I thank and praise the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making it possible for me to address you here today. All praise is due to Allah, who is a refuge for all those who live in fear, who comes to the help of those who are the salihin, who are the upright, who promotes the cause of the oppressed, who annihilates the oppressors, who destroys the monarchs and appoints just rulers in their place. Allah is the aid of those who seek aid, and is the supporter of those who are the faithful believers. O Allah, please send your choicest blessings on our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your servant, your messenger, your confidant, and your friend and your beloved intimate. I wish to start off by thanking the Masjidul Quds committee, Satarbai, and particularly our brother Sheikh Abdurrahman Alexander, for affording me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and as we remember the need for a Ash-Shaheed Imaam Abdullah Haroun in our lives and in our community. I wish to publicly thank the Harun family for giving me the opportunity to perform this very important task of coordinating the 50th Commemoration Committee. You, the Harun family, have opened up your home, your memories, your contacts, your thoughts, and your feelings to me and my family. I am deeply humbled, and please forgive me if I have not been able to live up to all your expectations as we were commemorating Imam Abdullah Haroun this year. I will be addressing this topic of the need to remember Imam Haroun in the form of asking a few questions. And some of these questions are my own, and some of the questions have been asked to me during this time that I have been coordinating this 50th Commemoration Committee. Some of them are fairly straightforward and mundane questions. And one of the questions that I will deal with is, and this was asked by ulama, was, do you know which Quranic verses Imam was inspired by? What did he like to recite? What was he reciting often? I also asked myself this question: had I been born earlier, what would I have done to help Imam Haroun? And what would I have been? Would I have been in his inner circle? Would I have been part of his youth groups? And so forth. Many people ask the question, Imam Haroun is loved by so many people, and why is that? What was there about his character? Then there's obviously the more difficult questions, and we will deal with them as well in some way through the talk, which was, well, was he involved in politics, or was he involved as an imam, as if it's separate things, And then, because our community likes is driven by this fuel of fitna, you know. So we say, was there anybody that you know that actually sold Imam out, you know? So they want to probe more things. And then there are questions that are obviously asked about the inquest and so forth. But let me start first and foremostly by sharing with you, whenever I address a gathering, sharing with you something that makes me uncomfortable. And this is something that I have imbibed from people who particularly knew the nice nature of Imam Harun. So he'd come into a gathering and you wouldn't even see him. But we know we have this practice amongst us, which is an uncomfortable practice, that when we see somebody important in the gathering, we say, "Kom vorentoe," you know, "Come stand here." We give special attention, and then what we do is we have a general thank you and welcome to everybody else, as if everybody else does not have a name. And so I'm very uncomfortable with this. And so when you're sometimes uncomfortable, you complain in your mind, and we hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you some guidance on these matters. And so I came across this beautiful hadith, and I want us to be guided by this hadith as we sit here. And so this hadith is called "The Virtues of Gathering in the Remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." And for those of you who have good memories, you will remember this was a hadith that was quoted by the Imam of the Haram on the day of Arafah in this just Hajj, this past. But let me share with you in English this particular hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hadith goes like this, that no people gather together in the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reciting His book, studying it amongst themselves, except that the sakina, the tranquility, descends upon them, that Allah's mercy covers them, that angels surround them, and Allah mentions amongst those that are with Him all of us that is sitting here by name. So do you understand why it is important? That Allah recognizes you and you and you and my sisters upstairs by name, by gathering better than our ones. And I am honored that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned all of us by name. So when we deal with the subject of Imam Harun, one of the things that we are saying that this was an important character in our community, and what is it that we inspire and what we take from him. And so when we go with this theme of important people in gatherings, I ask myself this question, that let's for a moment say we are sitting in a gathering, and let me find a particularly loathsome character in the Muslim mind today. If, say, somebody like Narendra Modi walks into a gathering, so everybody who doesn't know who's Narendra Modi, he's the Prime Minister of India. He is the one who has put an entire Kashmir under lockdown for over 50 days. And if the other pet hate person that we like to refer to is Benjamin Netanyahu, and you know what he does to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And I ask myself, if they must walk into a gathering, how will we respond to them? And then let's go to that other loathsome character called MBS and his cousin next door called MBZ. How will we react when we see these people when they come into a gathering? And there's a purpose to these questions. Please bear with me. Sometimes we are in gatherings and very important business people walk in with very questionable business practices. But you know they are important public personalities, so we get excited. And one of the things that we do is we take out the cell phone. Some of us are smart enough. We put it on the selfie stick and we take pictures with these people. Now I ask you, are you of those people who will take pictures? Or are you of those people who will take the nearest object, possibly your shoe, and throw it at them? Would you be amongst those who would be quiet and not say anything? Or would you be of those who will just get up and leave? And now let me turn the subject completely around. If those are the most loathsome of characters, let us go to the most beloved. And I ask myself that if on this special day, in this special place, in this special month of Muharram, and in this sacred hour, I am to come across by the will of Allah, and you know the will of Allah is such that we cannot fathom it, we cannot imagine it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it possible for us to be in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam right here and right now, what will we do? What will we tell him? Will we tell him that, you know, we've got so many ulama, we've got so many khufad, we built so many mosques? Will we tell him all of these things? And how will we react? We know with absolute certainty that that will be the most joyous day in any of our lives, and that any problem, that anything that we may feel in our hearts will immediately dissipate just by the sight of him. But because I have given this thought of meeting Rasulullah and being in his company so much thought, I've come across this feeling in my heart that says, but what if Rasulullah turns around and asks me, and he turns to me and he's going to ask me a question? And if he asks me, despite his love for me and all of you and all of creation, not just all of the Muslims and not just all of Allah's human beings that he created, but all of his creation, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turns to me with that disarming smile that he would have, and he asks me a question, I'm afraid that he will ask me a question that I will be ashamed to answer. And if he asks me, are you of those who have left my Hussein alone in Karbala? What will my answer be? Did you not answer the call of my Hussein? And if I dare to answer him, how will I say that I was not there? But what will I say to our Prophet when he says, okay, you were not there, but were you there for the families of those killed by the apartheid government? If you were not there for my Hussein, did you help the cause of justice, which was the cause of my Hussein? If you were not there for my granddaughter Zainab after Karbala, were you at least there for Auntie Khalima, the wife of Imam Abdullah Haroun? On the 9th of September, 1964, Babla Saluji was thrown out of a building in Joburg. Did I once try and make contact with Ruqayya Saluji, his widow? Did I ask, what has this 55 years been? Have I reached out and touched the hand of Unkosinati Biko, that same hand that pulled the cart that had his father's coffin on the day they buried him? Have I reached out to the family of Ahmad Timo? And I'm going to have great difficulty in saying that, you know what, there was not even a small practice of Imam Abdullah Haroun that was in our times, that inspired us as a generation, that I have had difficulty in reaching out to. What would I say that in this Heritage Month that coincided with the month of Muharram, that I neither know my heritage as a Muslim, nor do I know the heritage as a South African? Now let us just remind ourselves, Imam Hussein made his last memorable stand with absolutely everything he had on the plains of Karbala. Babla Saluji made his last stance on the 7th floor of Grace Building. Steve Biko's last stand was in Pretoria Central Prison. Ahmad Timo made his last stand on the 10th floor of John Foster Square. And our beloved Imam Harun succumbed to the injuries in Maitland Police Station. They all said, like Imam Hussein, Hal min nasirin yansurna, is there anyone to help me in my cause? Imam, is that watch, right? Okay, shukran, I'll check that. Okay. I started this talk with the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis sabri was salat. This reference to sabr occurs 103 times in the Holy Quran. And let us reflect on this Quranic concept beyond the usual translation as that of meaning patience. There is the sabr of those such as Ash-Shaheed Imaam Abdullah Haroun, whom we are commemorating. He was indeed a true, committed, sincere, and faithful servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew his daily circumstances that required for him to be vigilant, to be on guard. He knew that he needs to be a servant that does not complain. He was self-controlled as he struggled and suffered for this higher cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the times when he felt torn between family obligations, demands to engage in da'wah, organizational commitments, and feeling frustrated by the apartheid setting, that Imam that Imam also had to have patience and the sabr, particularly from fellow members of his organization that he belonged to, who used to sneer at him for visiting the karamats. They used to say to him, "Jais Musa Kafa Imam." They would be even more sinister, and they would feel offended by the fact that he chose to speak out against the apartheid government. It is at these moments that he found, as the verse said to us, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis-sabri was-salat," that he found solace in salah. He found solace in seclusion at the shrines. He found his strength in fasting. He found his strength in adhkar. It is knowing that salah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inviting us. Whenever we have difficulties, Allah invites us, "Come to me. Come relieve all your stresses with me. I'm the one who created you. I can help you." The Prophet used to say to Hazrat Bilal, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." Relieve us, ya Bilal. Because the Prophet used to turn to salah and whenever he used to feel emotionally distressed. I hope that I've already answered the question that people may have about Islam and the politics of Imam Harun. The notion that some people continue to have, that people who oppose the state are engaged in politics, and politics is dirty, and politics is against Islam. It is the very same people who did not say to the P.W. Botha's and the B.J. Foster's and Malans and Verwoerd that their politics was dirty. They rather said to these leaders of these Yabas, Nibas, we will not forget those who served in the apartheid management committees, those who served in the Indian and colored representative councils, the Bantustan leaders, the tricameral parliament members, all those people who now want to reinvent themselves and make you forget what they did and how they were the handmaidens of apartheid and how they created the conditions for the Bikos and the Haruns and the Timols to be incarcerated and to be killed in detention. These racist murderers and the collaborators did not know who they were dealing with. They did not understand who the spiritual being Ash-Shaheed Imam Haroun was, who loved Allah with every fiber of his being and was also loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just in case you think that here you have a speaker who is in so much awe of Imam Haroun, that is making claims and statements that is questionable. And let me put your mind at ease. No, because we live in this situation where we are constantly bombarded with negative information about various leaders. And so for this whole year that I am immersed in this life of Imam Abdullah Haroun, I'm saying to myself, I am yet to hear somebody say anything bad about him. Bad as in his nature, his character, he cheated somebody. And then I came across this hadith, an authentic hadith that says that if you love Allah and Allah loves you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause the people to love you. Let me just say that again. If you love Allah and Allah loves you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause the people to love you. 50 years after Spyker van Wyk and Major Genis killed Imam Haroun, and they wanted to bury him in a place that he'd be forgotten, the love for Imam Haroun continues to grow, and the love for Imam Haroun continues to grow because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed that love for his servant in our hearts. Today, the 27th of September, the day that he was killed, is indeed a sad day. It is especially a sad day for Imam Haroun's widow, Auntie Khalima. Please keep her in your du'as. She's 93 years old and she's not in the best of health. It is also a sad day for his children, for this community, and particularly for this country. We have just celebrated Heritage Day, in South Africa. Imam Haroun is part of that heritage. Heritage informs us who we are and where we came from, and what examples there is to be emulated. For his courage to stand up against apartheid, that was Imam Haroun, that is our heritage. And so if we are able to say our heritage in South Africa, for being here for 350 years, our record is clear, our martyrs are clear. Our message is clear, that we will not stand for corruption, we will not stand for injustice, and we will not be cowed, we will not be silent, and we will continue to raise our voices. But sometimes some of us do get confused. And I'm going to just point out one of those points of confusion that also took place in this week. And if we don't take these opportunities to point out what goes wrong. So some Muslims in Cape Town preferred this Heritage Day to eat cooked sisters and samosas with the British royalty on Heritage Day. Let us not forget that Harry and Meghan still benefit from the ill-gotten wealth of British colonialism, that it was money that was stolen not just from Muslim lands but from oppressed people all across the world. And if we think we are going too far in history, many of us feel very saddened by what is the state of the Muslim world today and how we are constantly under attack. And so let me tell you that Harry, who you saw in the newspapers that walked in burqa, that stood in our Oval Mosque, that Harry is an enemy combatant soldier who served in the British Army in Afghanistan, and he engaged in combat, and I want us to remember that. So if any one of us want to believe that Harry went to Afghanistan to eat kusixtas and samosas, he must have the head red. And I want us to be absolutely clear that constantly we need to question who we are and what we are doing. Bantu Steve Biko said, "Fear is an important determinant in South African politics. The state runs a network of spies, spies who sit in masjids, spies who go on Hajj, and yes, they go on Hajj because they reported on Imam all his details when he was on Hajj. When Imam was arrested, they asked him about those things. They perform aftakar with us. Biko teaches us that not only do these spies report on what they see, they want to curry favor with their masters. And so they invent lies and tell even more dangerous things about our leaders. So anybody that knows that when you stand up for justice, this is not a walk in the park, the state will put its surveillance machinery at work at you. The question for all of us is, when we support these individuals, are we supporting them or are we making their lives more difficult? Be careful what we report and what we say. I'm very mindful of the time. I want us just in this last few minutes, just to go in these last few days of September, before the 27th, before Imam was killed. And I want us to think about Imam Haroun in the presence of Spyker van Wyk and Major Genis. We are literally talking about Imam Haroun facing his Karbala moment. And one of the first things, the security police would have attempted to do was to see if they could corrupt him. It's all right, man, you're a nice guy. We'll give you some money. You can go to another place. They think that they could convince him to turn around and work for them. And this is usually done by coercion. So they'll tell him, if you don't do that, we'll tell the people about you, who you really are. Okay? This coercion involves applying pressure on people like Imam Haroun by broadly looking at 4 of their potential weaknesses. The one is the ego. Yeah? We like people to like us. Ne? Then they will look at his illicit, and I'm trying to use big words here, so that because we have many children amongst us, we are looking at illicit out-of-wedlock affairs. They will also know things about, do you use intoxicants? And lastly, are you one of those who love money? All these things are things we don't want people to know about us. Okay? So here is what makes Imam Haroun the personality that we want to emulate. Our love for him grows exponentially when we analyze the pressure the security police put on him. They arrested him in the morning. They came to the house in the morning. In the evening, They let his family know he is now under Section 6 of the Terrorism Act, meaning they can keep him for 180 days. So they had 180 days where they could keep him incommunicado anywhere they wanted to, beat him up and do whatever they want. Now Imam Harun had his ego issues under control. He didn't say, I'm going to the functions of the rich and not go to the poor. I'll go there only if I speak or anything like that. He was known to be amongst the people. He was known for his humility. He was known for praying and his dhikr and his solitude in karamats. He had no illicit affairs. He knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not be pleased with that type of behavior. Imam had no interest in any type of intoxicant. Here is a man who knew how to abstain, because he was fasting since the age of 16, every Monday and every Thursday already. He was the man, he was an Imam who loved fasting. And most importantly, he was not somebody interested in money. He refused to be paid by the Al-Jamia Jama'ah. He used to take the donations they'd give, just like we still carry the towel around, they'd bring it to you, the Imam, he said, no, give it back to the masjid. Okay? Now let us examine ourselves and ask ourselves this very final important questions. Can we easily be coerced? How do we fare on these points of ego, money, intoxicants, and illicit affairs? Just from his behavior, from his character, we know that Imam Harun could not be bought, he could not be coerced. This is why he was not afraid. The violence that they meted out to him, the beatings, the torture, began because they could not coerce him. Despite all their threats and violence, Spijker and Khanis and their spies, they were the losers. Imam Harun built up his strength through years of Sabr with Salah, with fasting, with dhikr, and in solitude, and with his relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every beating, every torture, every abuse brought him closer to his destination. His strength is the protection of Allah to his awliya. فَإِنَّكَ أَوْلِيَا إِلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. No fear, no sorrow, no regrets. Shukran wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.